The gunfire split this afternoon air like thunder, and I didn't think, I just moved. My body collided with the small boy's frame, driving him to the ground behind the fountain as concrete exploded where he'd been standing seconds before. The first bullet tore through my shoulder with a heat so intense it felt cold. The second punched into my side, stealing my breath. The third and fourth, I barely registered where they hit, only that I was still covering the child, still shielding him with everything I had. Time fractured into fragments, the boy's terrified screams muffled against my chest, the metallic taste of blood in my mouth, the weight of my body becoming impossible to hold up. Somewhere beyond the ringing in my ears, more gunshots erupted, followed by shouting in a language I couldn't process. My vision blurred, darkening at the edges, but I kept my arms locked around the child. He couldn't have been more than 6 years old, with dark curls and eyes wide with terror that would haunt me if I lived long enough to remember them. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. I'd only been walking through Riverside Park because my shift at County General had ended early for once. 16 hours on my feet in the emergency department, dealing with understaffed chaos and patients who waited hours for treatment we could barely afford to give them. My uniform still smelled of antiseptic and desperation, and my sneakers, the ones with holes I kept meaning to replace, had carried me toward the park because it was beautiful there, because the fountain reminded me that somewhere in this city things could still be peaceful. Then the black sedans had appeared, moving too fast through the park's circular drive. The boy had been playing near the fountain with what looked like a nanny or bodyguard, a woman in professional attire who'd been scrolling through her phone. I'd noticed them only because the child's laughter had been so pure, so unself-conscious in a way that made my chest ache. I'd been thinking about my own situation, the eviction notice stuffed in my purse, the negative bank balance, the student loans that would follow me to my grave. Then the first sedan's window had rolled down, and I'd seen the gun. The woman with the boy had seen it too, had tried to react, but she'd been too slow. I'd been closer. Some instinct buried deep in my DNA, the same one that made me run toward emergencies instead of away from them, had taken over. I'd thrown myself at the child, and my body had become his shield. Now I was lying on cold concrete that was growing warm with my blood, and the boy was screaming for someone named Papa. My arms were weakening. I tried to tell him it would be okay, but no words came out. Only a wet sound that terrified me more than the pain. I was drowning in my own blood, my nursing training supplied helpfully. Punctured lung, maybe 2. Internal hemorrhaging, minutes, not hours. The gunfire had stopped, but the chaos hadn't. Footsteps pounded closer, multiple sets, heavy and fast. Someone was shouting orders in Italian, the tone commanding enough to cut through my failing consciousness. Hands gripped my shoulders, and I tried to protest, to tell them not to move me, that you shouldn't move someone with unknown internal injuries. But my voice wouldn't work. Cristo Santo, a man's voice breathed above me, closer than the others. Matteo, are you hurt? Did they touch you? No, Papa. The boy's voice, the one I'd been shielding, cracked with tears. She saved me. The lady saved me. Don't let her die, Papa, please. The hands on my shoulders gentled, and through my dimming vision, I saw him. Even through the haze of approaching death, I registered the impact of his presence. Dark hair swept back from a face carved from marble and shadow, a strong jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping beneath olive skin. But it was his eyes that held me, dark as espresso, wide with something that looked like horror and wonder combined. Who are you? He demanded, but his voice had softened, his hands cradling my head with unexpected tenderness as someone else worked to stem the bleeding from my wounds. Why did you do this? I tried to answer, to explain that there hadn't been a why, only a how. How could I not? But blood bubbled past my lips instead of words. My vision was tunneling now, the world shrinking to just his face above mine, those eyes that seemed to be memorizing every detail of my features, as if I were something precious he was about to lose. "Stay with me," he commanded, and there was such authority in his voice that my body obeyed despite wanting to surrender. "Do you hear me? You don't have my permission to die. Luca!" This last was shouted to someone I couldn't see. "Where the hell is the doctor?" "2 minutes out, boss," another male voice responded. "But she's not going to make it 2 minutes. Look at the blood loss. Then we make her last 3. The man holding me, the boy's father, Papa, pressed his hand directly over the worst wound in my side, and the pain that exploded through me yanked me back from the edge I'd been sliding toward. His other hand came to my face, surprisingly gentle fingers against my cheek. "What's your name? Tell me your name." "Maya," I managed to whisper, the word costing me everything. "Maya Santos." "Maya." He repeated it like a prayer or a promise. "I'm Dante Moretti, and you're going to live, Maya Santos, because I don't accept any other outcome. Do you understand me?" I didn't understand anything except that I was so cold, and his hand on my face was warm. My eyes were closing, despite his commands, despite his son's continued pleas somewhere in the background. I'd saved the boy. That was enough. It had to be enough, because I couldn't hold on anymore. "No," Dante's voice cut through the gathering darkness. "Eyes on me, Maya. Stay with me. For Matteo. He needs to thank you properly. You can't rob him of that." It was a clever manipulation, appealing to the same instinct that had made me shield a stranger's child with my own body. My eyes fluttered open again, finding his. He was beautiful and terrible all at once. This man, whose son I'd saved, whose world I'd stumbled into in the seconds it took to make one selfless choice. "There you are," he murmured, something like relief flickering across his features. "Good girl. Stay right there. Help is coming." The doctor, because a vehicle had screeched to a halt nearby and someone with a medical bag was shouting for space, arrived in a controlled chaos of urgent Italian and English. Professional hands replaced Dante's on my wounds, but he didn't move away. Instead, he shifted to hold my hand, his grip fierce, as if he could anchor me to life through sheer will. 4 gunshot wounds, the doctor was saying rapidly. "Entry and exit on the shoulder, clean through. The other 3, Dio mio, one's lodged near her spine. We need to move her now." "Then move her," Dante ordered. "My vehicle. We're not waiting for an ambulance." "Mr. Moretti, the hospital is 20 minutes away, and you said she doesn't have 20 minutes. My home has a fully equipped surgical suite. We can be there in 5. There was a pause, and I felt the doctor's hesitation, the weight of a decision that violated every protocol. "Your suite isn't equipped for this level of trauma. Then make it equipped. You have 5 minutes to prepare. Call ahead, get whatever you need, but we're not losing her because we wasted time debating." Dante's voice dropped to something dangerous. This woman threw herself in front of bullets meant for my son, for Matteo. She didn't hesitate, didn't think about the cost. She just acted. And you're going to save her life, or I'm going to be very disappointed. Are we clear? "Crystal," the doctor replied, and I heard him speaking rapidly into a phone, rattling off medical terms and orders. Then I was being lifted, carefully, professionally, but the movement sent new waves of agony through my body that made the darkness surge up again. I whimpered despite myself, a pathetic sound that I hated. "I know," Dante's voice was in my ear, his hand still gripping mine as we moved. "I know it hurts, but you're the bravest woman I've ever met, Maya Santos. If you survived this long, you can survive a car ride." I wanted to tell him that I wasn't brave, that I was a nurse who lived in a studio apartment in the worst part of the city, who sometimes chose between eating and paying utilities, who'd been ready to give up before I'd even seen his son in danger. But the words wouldn't come, and then I was being placed on soft leather that smelled expensive, and Dante was climbing in beside me, never releasing my hand. "Matteo?" I managed to croak. "Safe," Dante assured me, his thumb stroking across my knuckles in a gesture that felt absurdly intimate, given that we were strangers, given that I was dying in the back seat of what I was dimly aware was an armored SUV. "You saved him. Not a scratch on him because of you." The vehicle was moving, fast but smooth, and I could hear the doctor talking to someone on the phone, discussing blood types and surgical equipment. I should have been terrified. I was in a strange vehicle with strange men, heading to an unknown location instead of a hospital. Everything about this screamed danger. But Dante's hand in mine felt safe somehow, his presence a shield as effective as the one my body had provided for his son. "Why?" I whispered, because I needed to know. "Why not hospital?" "Because the people who tried to kill my son will have people at the hospitals," Dante replied, his voice low and honest in a way that should have frightened me more. "They'll be waiting to see if they succeeded, to finish what they started if they didn't, and I won't risk them finding you there, vulnerable in a hospital bed. You're a witness now. You've seen their faces, and more than that." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice carried a weight I couldn't fully interpret. "You're under my protection now, whether you wanted it or not, whether you understand what that means or not." I didn't understand. My mind was fragmenting, thoughts scattering like startled birds. I was a nurse. I knew what 4 gunshot wounds meant. I knew my odds weren't good even with immediate surgical intervention. The bullet near my spine, if it shifted, if it had damaged the cord, I might never walk again, might never work again, might never do anything again except exist as a cautionary tale about the cost of heroism. "Don't," Dante said sharply, and I realized I was crying, tears sliding down my temples into my hair. "Don't go there. Don't give up." "I'm scared," I admitted, "because what did pride matter now?" "I know." His other hand came to my face again, wiping away my tears with a tenderness that seemed at odds with everything else about him. The expensive suit, the armored vehicle, the casual mention of enemies who'd shoot into a public park. "But I'm here, and I promise you, Maya, I keep my promises. You're going to live through this. You're going to wake up in a room where Matteo can thank you properly, where I can begin to repay what you did." "Don't want repayment," I managed. "Just wanted him safe." Something shifted in Dante's expression, a crack in the controlled facade he'd maintained. His jaw worked, and for a moment I thought he might cry too. Instead, he leaned down, his forehead nearly touching mine, his breath warm against my cold skin. "You should have run," he whispered, and there was anguish in his voice now. "When you saw the guns, you should have run away like any sane person. Why didn't you run, Maya?" "Because running away wasn't who I was. Because I'd spent my entire life running toward people who needed help, even when it cost me everything. Because in that split second, I'd seen a child who looked like he believed the world was good, and I couldn't let that innocence be destroyed if I could prevent it. But I didn't have the strength to say any of that. My eyes were closing again, and this time, I couldn't force them back open. The cold was absolute now, spreading from my core outward, and I could feel my heart stuttering, struggling, beginning to fail. "No!" Dante's voice was sharp with command and something that sounded like panic. "Stay with me, damn it! We're almost there! Doctor!" 2 minutes, the doctor's voice, tense and focused. "Keep her talking. Keep her conscious." But I couldn't respond. The darkness was too heavy, too seductive in its promise of peace. Somewhere far away, I heard Dante calling my name. Felt his hand gripping mine hard enough to hurt if I'd still been capable of feeling pain. I heard other voices, urgent and afraid, and the vehicle stopping, and doors opening to a rush of activity that my fading consciousness couldn't track. The last thing I heard before the darkness took me completely was Dante's voice, raw with an emotion I couldn't name. "You don't die on me, Maya Santos. You don't get to be this brave and then die. I won't allow it. Do you hear me? I won't allow it." Then nothing. When consciousness returned, hours or days later, I had no way of knowing. It came in fragments. Pain, first and foremost, radiating from my shoulder and side, and somewhere deep in my back. The steady beep of a heart monitor. The whisper of expensive sheets against my skin. The scent of antiseptic mixed with something warmer, more human. Cologne, maybe, or aftershave. I tried to open my eyes, but my lids were so heavy, weighted down with exhaustion and whatever drugs were flowing into my system. I could sense light beyond my closed eyes, and warmth, and the presence of another person in the room. Someone was holding my hand. "Welcome back," Dante's voice, rough as if he hadn't slept or had been shouting or both. "The doctor said you might wake soon. Seems he was right." I managed to force my eyes open, blinking against the soft light from a bedside lamp. The room that came into focus was nothing like any hospital room I'd ever seen, more like a luxury hotel suite, all warm woods and soft fabrics and original artwork on the walls. Medical equipment surrounded the bed, incongruous against the elegant decor, monitoring my vital signs and delivering whatever cocktail of medications was keeping me alive. And beside the bed, in a leather armchair that looked like it had been pulled close, sat Dante Moretti. He looked like hell. His expensive suit was rumpled, his tie loosened, his usually immaculate hair disheveled as if he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his jaw was dark with several days' worth of stubble. "You stayed," I whispered, my voice raw. "Where else would I be?" He leaned forward, releasing my hand, only to press the call button on the side of my bed. "You took 4 bullets for my son. The least I can do is be here when you wake up." If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. A door opened and the doctor entered. The same one from the park, I thought, though everything from that day was hazy. He approached the bed with professional efficiency, checking my monitors, examining my pupils with a pen light, asking me questions about my pain level and whether I could feel my toes. I could. That was something. "You're a very lucky woman, Ms. Santos," the doctor said, making notes on a tablet. "The bullet near your spine missed the cord by millimeters. Any closer, and you'd be paralyzed. As it is, you're going to need months of physical therapy, and there may be some residual nerve damage, but you should make a full recovery." "How long?" I asked, though I wasn't sure if I was asking how long I'd been unconscious or how long recovery would take. "You've been out for 3 days," Dante answered, "and you'll be here for at least 2 more weeks, possibly 3, depending on how you heal. Doctor's orders." Here, I looked around again, reality beginning to penetrate the drug-induced haze. "This isn't a hospital." "It's my home," Dante confirmed. "My private surgical suite. You've had around-the-clock care from Dr. Marchetti and a full nursing staff. Everything you'd have in a hospital, but safer." Safer for whom? The question hovered on my lips, but I was too tired to voice it. Instead, I asked, "Matteo?" Dante's expression softened in a way that transformed his entire face. "Asking about my son before yourself. You're consistent, I'll give you that." He glanced at Dr. Marchetti. "Give us a few minutes?" The doctor nodded and left, and Dante settled back in his chair, his dark eyes studying me with an intensity that made me hyper-aware of how I must look, pale, weak, probably bruised and battered beyond recognition. "Matteo is fine," he said quietly. Not physically hurt, though emotionally. He hasn't stopped talking about you, about the angel lady who saved him. He's been asking every day when you'll wake up so he can thank you. Tears stung my eyes, and I wasn't sure why. Relief, maybe? Or the realization that my split-second decision had actually worked, that the boy was alive and safe, that the pain and fear and hovering near death had been worth it. Don't cry, Dante said, and suddenly he was there, leaning over the bed, his hand cupping my face with the same tenderness I remembered from the park. You're going to make me feel like a monster. Why? I whispered. Why what? Why am I here? In your home? Why did you bring me here instead of a hospital? Why? I trailed off, unable to articulate the bigger question underneath all of this. Why? Do I matter to you? Dante was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing my cheekbone in a gesture that felt far too intimate for strangers. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and raw with honesty. Because when I saw you lying there in your own blood, having sacrificed yourself for my son without a second thought, without knowing who he was or who I am or what it might cost you, something in me recognized something in you. He paused, his eyes searching mine. Do you know what I am, Maya? What I do? I thought about the armored vehicles, the men with guns, the Italian commands, the casual mention of enemies who'd shoot into a public park. I wasn't naive. I'd grown up in a city where organized crime was an open secret, where certain names carried weight and fear in equal measure. I can guess, I said quietly. Then you understand why I can't let you go back to your life, Dante continued. The men who tried to kill Matteo, they saw you. They know you intervened, and when they find out you survived, they'll come for you, to silence you, to punish me through you, unless you're under my protection. Protection. The word he'd used in the SUV, the word that sounded like both a gift and a sentence. I should have been terrified. Should have demanded he call the police. Should have insisted on being taken to a real hospital. Should have done anything except lie here, feeling strangely safe in the home of a man who was clearly dangerous. What does that mean? I asked. Protection? It means you stay here until it's safe. It means my men guard you. It means anyone who wants to hurt you has to go through me first. His hand was still on my face, his touch gentle despite the steel in his words. It means you're mine now, Maya Santos, whether you want to be or not, because I protect what's mine, and you became mine the moment you threw yourself in front of bullets meant for my son. The possessiveness in his voice should have alarmed me. Instead, it sent a shiver through me that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with the heat in his dark eyes, the way he was looking at me like I was something precious and breakable and worth protecting at any cost. I don't even know you, I whispered. No, he agreed. But you will. You have weeks of recovery ahead of you, Maya. Weeks in my home, under my roof, with my son eager to spend every possible moment with the woman who saved his life. You'll get to know us, and then you can decide. Decide what? Whether you want to stay. His thumb brushed my lower lip, and my breath caught. Whether you want to leave your old life behind and build something new here, with us. It was insane. I'd known this man for all of maybe 10 minutes of conscious time. I was a nurse who could barely pay rent, and he was, whatever he was. Mafia, probably. Definitely dangerous. Absolutely not someone I should be feeling this pull toward, this magnetic attraction that made my heart race despite the pain medication, flooding my system. But I remembered his hands on my face in the park, commanding me to live. His voice in the SUV, promising to keep me safe. The way he'd stayed by my bedside for 3 days while I fought to survive. The tenderness in his expression when he spoke about his son. I have a life, I said weakly. A job, an apartment, an eviction notice, Dante interrupted gently. I had my people check. You're 2 months behind on rent, drowning in student loans, working yourself to death at a hospital that doesn't appreciate you. That's not a life, Maya. That's survival, and you deserve better than that. How did he know about the eviction notice? The thought should have frightened me, but instead, I felt a strange relief. He knew the worst of my situation and was still here, still looking at me like I mattered. Your son, I said, changing the subject because I wasn't ready to confront everything else. Can I see him? Dante's entire demeanor shifted, softening in a way that made him look younger, more vulnerable. He'll be thrilled. But Maya, he hesitated, then continued. Matteo doesn't have a mother. She died when he was 2. It's been just him and me against the world since then. He's a good kid, but he's lonely, and he's already attached to you in a way I haven't seen since we lost her. If you're not planning to stay, if you're going to leave as soon as you can walk out that door, tell me now, before he gets more attached, before he gets hurt. The protectiveness in his voice, the way he was putting his son's emotional well-being above everything else, touched something deep in my chest. This was a man who loved his child fiercely, who'd do anything to keep him safe, and that included vetting me, ensuring I wouldn't become another loss in Matteo's young life. I don't know what I'm planning, I admitted. Everything is happening so fast. 3 days ago, I was just a nurse walking through a park. Now I'm here, in your home, and you're talking about me staying, about protection and new lives, and I don't know how to process any of it. Then don't, Dante said simply. Process it, just heal, get better, spend time with Matteo. Let us take care of you for once, instead of you taking care of everyone else. And when you're strong enough to think clearly, when you're not full of pain, medication, and trauma, then decide. But give us a chance, Maya. Give me a chance to show you that what I'm offering is real. Before I could respond, a soft knock came at the door. Dante glanced over, then back at me. That'll be him. He's been checking every hour to see if you're awake. Are you ready? I wasn't ready for any of this, but I nodded anyway, and Dante called out permission to enter. The door opened, and a small figure burst through, Matteo, all dark curls and eyes just like his father's, dressed in expensive clothes that couldn't quite contain his energetic movements. He stopped short when he saw me awake, his expression transforming from excited to suddenly shy. It's really you, he breathed. You're really awake. Hi, Matteo, I managed, my voice still rough but warmer than it had been. I'm Maya. I know, he said seriously, taking a tentative step closer. Papa told me. He said you're the bravest person he's ever met, that you saved me even though you didn't know me. Why did you do that? Out of the mouths of children, the same question everyone kept asking, the one I still didn't have a good answer for. I looked at this beautiful boy, alive and whole because of a choice I'd made without thinking, and felt tears burning again. Because you needed help, I said simply. And I'm a nurse. Helping people is what I do. Papa says you're going to stay with us while you get better, Matteo continued, coming to stand beside his father's chair, leaning against Dante's arm in a gesture of casual trust that spoke volumes about their relationship. Is that true? Will you really stay? I met Dante's eyes over his son's head, saw the question there, the hope mixed with wariness. This man had lost his wife, had spent years protecting his son alone, had just watched a stranger nearly die to save that son, and now he was offering me a place in their world, a home in their family, safety in his protection. It was too much, too fast, too impossible. But when Matteo smiled at me, a gap-toothed grin full of innocence and hope, I heard myself say, "Yeah, sweetheart, I'll stay." Recovery came in waves, some days better than others. The first week passed in a blur of medication adjustments, physical therapy sessions that left me sobbing from pain, and Mateo's daily visits that somehow made everything bearable. He'd bring his homework to my room, spread his books across the foot of my bed, and chatter about his day while I drifted in and out of consciousness. His presence was a balm I hadn't known I needed. Dante was a constant shadow, always there, but never imposing. He'd work from a laptop in the corner of my room, take calls in Italian that sounded like threats wrapped in silk, and somehow always know when I needed water or when the pain was becoming unbearable before I could voice it. At night, when the nightmares came, reliving the gunfire, the impact of bullets tearing through flesh, the certainty of death, he'd be there, his hand finding mine in the darkness, his voice low and steady as he talked me back from the edge. "Tell me about yourself," he said one evening during my second week, after Mateo had been tucked into bed. He'd pulled his chair closer to my bedside, a glass of whiskey in his hand, his tie loosened after a long day. "Before all this, who was Maya Santos?" I shifted carefully against the pillows, still unable to move without pain radiating through my torso. Nobody interesting. Nursing school on scholarships and loans, emergency room work because it paid slightly better than other departments. A studio apartment that I could barely afford. No family to speak of. My parents died in a car accident when I was 19. No siblings, no significant other, because who has time for dating when you're working 60-hour weeks just to keep your head above water? "Lonely," Dante observed quietly. "Surviving," I corrected. "There's a difference." "Is there?" He took a sip of his whiskey, his dark eyes never leaving my face. "Because from where I'm sitting, you were slowly drowning in a life that took everything and gave nothing back. At least until you decided to throw yourself in front of bullets for a child you'd never met." "Some people are worth saving," I said softly. "And you?" he asked. "Are you worth saving, Maya?" The question caught me off guard. No one had ever asked me that before. I'd spent so long being the caretaker, the helper, the one who sacrificed, that the concept of my own value felt foreign. "I don't know," I admitted. Dante set down his glass and leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, bringing him close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. "I do. You're worth more than you've ever been given credit for. Worth more than struggling to survive. Worth more than an eviction notice and crippling debt and a system that uses you up and throws you away. You barely know me." "I know enough." His hand found mine, his fingers lacing through mine with a familiarity that should have felt presumptuous, but instead felt right. "I know you're brave and selfless to the point of self-destruction. I know you have a good heart in a world that tries to crush that out of people. I know my son lights up when you're around in a way he hasn't since his mother died. And I know that every time I look at you, I feel something I haven't felt in years, gratitude mixed with something more dangerous." My heart stuttered in my chest, and it had nothing to do with my injuries. "Dante, you don't have to say anything," he interrupted gently. "I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give. I'm just being honest. That's what you deserve. Honesty. So, here it is. I'm drawn to you in ways that terrify me. Because caring about someone in my world is dangerous. It makes you vulnerable. It gives your enemies a target. And I have plenty of enemies." "Like the ones who tried to kill Mateo," I said, voicing the question that had haunted me since I'd woken up. "Who were they? Why would someone want to hurt a child?" Dante's expression hardened, the softness disappearing behind the mask of the dangerous man he truly was. "They didn't want to hurt a child specifically. They wanted to hurt me. Mateo was just the most effective way to do that." He stood, moving to the window that overlooked his estate's grounds, his shoulders tense. "I run one of the oldest crime families in this city, Maya. We control territories, businesses, politicians. We have rules, codes of conduct that have kept the peace for decades. But there's a rival family, the Volkovs, who don't respect those rules. They want what we have, and they're willing to break every code to get it, including targeting children. The reality of his world settled over me like a heavy cloak. I'd known abstractly what he was, but hearing him say it explicitly made it real in a way I couldn't ignore. "Does it scare you?" he asked, still facing the window. "Knowing what I am, what I do?" "It should," I replied honestly. "But no, not the way you think. I'm not scared of you, Dante. I'm scared of what might happen to Matteo, to you, because now that I know you both, now that I'm here, I care. And caring makes me vulnerable too." He turned to face me, and the look in his eyes was so intense it stole my breath. In 3 long strides, he was beside the bed again, his hand cupping my face with a tenderness that contradicted everything he'd just told me about his world. "Then we'll be vulnerable together," he murmured, "and we'll protect what matters, starting with you getting strong enough to defend yourself if you need to. I'm a nurse, not a fighter. You're a survivor who threw herself in front of bullets. You're already a fighter, Maya. You just need to learn how to fight smart, not just brave." Over the following days, as my strength slowly returned, Dante made good on that promise. He brought in trainers who worked within my physical limitations, teaching me basic self-defense, how to assess threats, how to use my surroundings as weapons. It was exhausting and painful and sometimes humiliating when my healing body couldn't do what my mind wanted it to. But Dante was always there, encouraging without coddling, pushing without breaking me. And in those moments, his hands correcting my stance, his voice low in my ear as he coached me through movements, his body close enough to feel his heat, the attraction between us became impossible to ignore. Matteo noticed, of course. Children always do. "Papa likes you," he announced one afternoon while we were reading together in the garden. I'd graduated to short walks with assistants, and the October sun felt glorious on my skin after weeks inside. "I like your papa too," I said carefully, turning the page of his storybook. "No, I mean he really likes you, the way he liked Mama." Matteo looked up at me with those serious dark eyes. "He smiles more now, and he doesn't work as much at night. He stays with you instead." My throat tightened. "Would that be okay with you? If your papa and I became friends, close friends?" Matteo considered this, with the gravity only children can bring to important questions. "Mama would have liked you. She was brave too. She got sick, and she fought really hard, but the sickness won anyway. Papa said she was the strongest person he knew." He paused, then added, "But I think you're strong too. You saved me. That makes you kind of like a superhero." I blinked back tears, pulling him closer with my good arm. "You're a pretty great kid, you know that? Papa says that too." He snuggled against me, careful of my injuries. "I think you should stay forever, not just until you're better. Forever and ever." "Forever is a long time," I said softly. "But that's how long I want you here." That evening, after Matteo was in bed, Dante found me on the terrace overlooking the gardens. I'd wrapped myself in a cashmere throw against the autumn chill, my body finally strong enough to sit outside without assistance. "You're healing well," he observed, settling into the chair beside mine. "Dr. Marchetti is impressed with your progress." "I have good motivation," I replied, thinking of Matteo's words earlier. "Your son is pretty persuasive about wanting me to stay." Dante's lips curved into a small smile. "He gets that from me. When I want something, I'm very persuasive." "And what do you want, Dante?" The smile faded, replaced by something more serious, more raw. "Honestly, I want you to stay not because you feel obligated, not because you're scared to leave, but because you want to be here, with us, with me." He turned to face me fully. "I want to take you to dinner once you're well enough. I want to show you that my world isn't just violence and danger, I want Mateo to have someone who cares about him the way you do. And selfishly, Maya, I want to know what it feels like to kiss you without worrying that I'll hurt you." My breath caught. "Dante." "But I also want you to understand what you'd be choosing," he continued, his voice dropping lower. "The danger isn't over. The Volkovs haven't given up. In fact, they've escalated. My sources tell me they're planning something big. They know you're here. They know you saved Mateo. And in their twisted logic, that makes you a legitimate target now. Not just a witness, but someone I care about. Someone they can use against me." Fear spiked through me, cold and sharp. "Then maybe I should leave. Go somewhere they can't find me. You said you'd help me disappear." "No." The word was flat, absolute. "Running would just make you more vulnerable. Here, you're protected. My men guard every entrance. Security systems monitor every inch of the property, and I have resources the Volkovs can't match." He reached for my hand. "But I need you to choose this, Maya. Choose to stay knowing the risks. Choose us knowing that loving someone in my world means accepting that every day could bring danger. That's the reality I can't change, no matter how much I wish I could." "Loving?" I whispered, my heart pounding. "Is that what this is?" Dante's thumb traced circles on my palm, his touch sending shivers up my arm. "I think it could be, if we're brave enough to let it." Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression shifted instantly from soft to hard, from the man who'd just spoken of love to the crime lord who controlled an empire. "I have to take this," he said, standing abruptly. "Stay here. Don't go inside alone." He moved away, speaking in rapid Italian, his voice sharp with command. I couldn't understand the words, but I understood the tone. Something had happened. Something bad. When he returned, minutes later, his face was grave. "There's been an incident at one of my warehouses, a fire. My men are calling it arson." He ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration. "It's a message from the Volkovs. They're getting bolder." "Is anyone hurt?" "3 of my men. Burns, smoke inhalation. They're being taken to—" He stopped, looking at me with sudden intensity. "They're being taken to County General, your hospital." My hospital, where I'd worked, where I was known, where my absence had probably been noted. "Dante, I should go. I can help. I'm a nurse." "Absolutely not. It's too dangerous." "They're hurt because of your war with the Volkovs. A war I'm now part of, whether I like it or not. Let me help. It's what I do." I stood carefully, ignoring the protest from my healing wounds. "Besides, if they're at County General, my colleagues will be treating them. I can make sure they get the best care, that no one asks too many questions." Dante's jaw clenched, conflict clear in his features. "You're not fully healed. You shouldn't be working." "I'm not asking permission." I met his gaze steadily. "I'm telling you, I'm going. You can either facilitate that safely, or I'll find my own way there." For a long moment, we stared at each other, wills clashing. Then, surprisingly, Dante laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Dio, you're stubborn." "I learned from the best," I countered, thinking of how he'd commanded me to live in that park, how he'd refused to accept my death as an option. "Fine. But you go with a full security detail. You don't leave their sight, and you're there as a consultant only. You're not physically treating patients. Understood?" "Understood." An hour later, I found myself being driven through the city in another armored SUV flanked by 2 of Dante's men who looked like they could break someone in half without breaking a sweat. County General's emergency entrance was chaos when we arrived. The usual Friday night madness multiplied by the addition of 3 burn victims requiring immediate care. I slipped in through a side entrance, my security detail following at a discreet distance. My former colleagues did double takes when they saw me, their faces registering shock at my appearance. I'd lost weight during my recovery, moved differently now, carried myself with a wariness that hadn't been there before. Maya? Jennifer, one of the senior nurses, approached cautiously. Oh my God, we thought... There were rumors you'd been shot, but no one knew for sure. Where have you been? Recovering, I said simply. I heard about the burn victims. I know them. I want to help however I can. Jennifer's eyes narrowed slightly. You know them? Maya, those men are connected to... I know what they're connected to, I interrupted quietly. And I'm connected to them now too. So please, just let me help. She studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Room 3. Dr. Patterson is with them now. I made my way through the familiar corridors, my security detail blending into the chaos as well as men built like linebackers could. Room 3 was controlled pandemonium. Dr. Patterson barking orders, nurses moving with practiced efficiency, the 3 patients in varying states of consciousness and pain. I assessed them quickly with professional eyes. Second-degree burns across torso and arms. Smoke inhalation causing respiratory distress. Possible internal injuries from falling debris. They needed burn unit care, possibly surgical intervention. Dr. Patterson, I said, stepping forward. I can help coordinate their transfer to the burn unit. I know their family. I can ensure smooth communication. Patterson looked up, recognition flickering across his exhausted features. Santos? What are you doing here? And what happened to you? You look... Long story. These men are important. They need the best care we can give them, and they need discretion. No police reports, no questions. Can you do that? Patterson's expression grew wary. Maya, you know I can't just ignore... Yes, you can. A new voice cut through the room, cold and authoritative. I turned to see a man in an expensive suit standing in the doorway, flanked by more security. He was older than Dante, maybe mid-50s, with silver at his temples and eyes like chips of ice. These men work for me. Any reports filed will disappear. Any questions asked will be met with unfortunate consequences. Are we clear, Doctor? Patterson paled, but nodded. The man's gaze swept the room, landed on me, and something flickered in his expression. Recognition mixed with curiosity. You must be the nurse, he said, approaching me. The one who saved Dante's son. I'm Marco Moretti, Dante's uncle and consigliere. He extended a hand. It's an honor to meet the woman who threw herself in front of bullets for our family. I shook his hand, feeling the weight of assessment in his grip, his gaze. This was a test, I realized. How I handled myself here, in this moment, would determine how Dante's family viewed me. The honor is mine, I replied steadily. Your men need immediate care. I'm here to ensure they get it. Marco's lips curved slightly. Dante said you were remarkable. He undersold it. He turned to Dr. Patterson. You'll have whatever resources you need. Money is no object. Save my men, Doctor, and you'll find the Moretti family very grateful. Over the next several hours, I coordinated care, liaised between the medical staff and Dante's people, and made sure the 3 men received the best treatment County General could provide. It was exhausting work, made more so by my own healing body, protesting every movement, but it felt good to be useful again, to use my skills for something concrete and immediate. It was nearly 3 a.m. when everything finally stabilized, when the men were transferred to private rooms with round-the-clock security, when I could finally take a breath. I found myself in the staff break room, sipping terrible coffee and trying to ignore the way my wounds throbbed. You shouldn't be here. Dante's voice startled me. I looked up to find him standing in the doorway, still dressed in the same clothes from earlier, his eyes shadowed with exhaustion and something darker, fear, maybe, or anger. You should be home, resting. Your men needed help. My men have doctors. You're supposed to be healing, not working. He crossed the room in quick strides, his hands gripping my shoulders gently but firmly. "Do you have any idea how worried I was? When Marco called and said you'd been here for hours, that you'd been on your feet the entire time, Christo, Maya, you could have torn something, set back your recovery by weeks." "But I didn't," I said softly, reaching up to touch his face. "I'm okay, Dante, and your men are going to survive because we got them here fast, and I made sure they got the right care." His forehead dropped to mine, his breath warm against my lips. "You're going to give me a heart attack, woman. First throwing yourself in front of bullets, now this. Do you have a death wish?" "No," I whispered. "I have a life wish. For me, for Matteo, for you, for everyone who matters. And sometimes protecting that life means taking risks." "Like staying with me," he murmured. "That's a risk too. The best ones usually are." Then he was kissing me, fierce and desperate and achingly gentle all at once, mindful of my injuries, but unable to hold back the emotion any longer. I kissed him back, tasting whiskey and fear and something that felt dangerously like love, feeling the world narrow down to just this moment, this man, this impossible situation we'd found ourselves in. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, Dante rested his forehead against mine again. "Come home," he said simply. "Come home with me where you're safe, where I can protect you, where we can figure out what this is between us without the rest of the world interfering." "Home," I repeated, testing the word. "When did your place become my home?" "The moment you woke up in it," he replied without hesitation. "The moment Matteo asked you to stay forever. The moment I realized that losing you would destroy me almost as much as losing him would." My heart clenched at the raw honesty in his voice. "Dante, I love you, Maya Santos." The words fell between us like a confession and a prayer. I know it's too soon. I know it's insane. But I've faced death too many times not to recognize something worth living for when it appears in my life. And you, brave, stubborn, beautiful you, are worth everything. Tears slipped down my cheeks as I looked into his dark eyes and saw the truth there, the vulnerability of a powerful man offering his heart to someone who could break it. "I love you too," I whispered, the words both terrifying and liberating. "God help me, I love you too." This time when he kissed me, it was different, softer, deeper, a promise sealed with our lips. When we finally left the hospital, walking out into the pre-dawn darkness with his arm around my waist and my head on his shoulder, I knew that whatever came next, whatever dangers the Volkovs posed, whatever challenges his world would throw at us, we would face them together. Because sometimes love doesn't arrive on a schedule or follow the rules. Sometimes it crashes into your life in a park on an ordinary day when you make one brave choice that changes everything. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, it gives you a home where before you had only survival, a family where before you had only loneliness, and a future where before you saw only more of the same. As Dante's SUV pulled away from the hospital, I looked back one last time at the place that had represented my entire existence just weeks ago. Then I turned forward, toward the man beside me and the boy waiting for us at home, and I didn't look back again. The weeks that followed our confession at the hospital brought a peace I hadn't known existed, the kind that settles deep in your bones, despite the danger lurking at the edges. I moved through Dante's home with growing confidence, no longer a guest or a patient, but something more permanent. Matteo's laughter filled the halls, and Dante's presence became as necessary as breathing. We built a routine that felt like family, breakfasts together, Matteo's homework spread across the dining table while Dante handled business calls, evening walks through the gardens where Dante would hold my hand and tell me stories about his childhood before the weight of his empire settled on his shoulders. But underneath the domestic tranquility, tension simmered. The Volkovs hadn't made another move since the warehouse fire, And that silence felt more ominous than action would have. Dante's men reported increased surveillance, whispered threats, movements that suggested something bigger was coming. Marco visited frequently, his conversations with Dante conducted behind closed doors in rapid Italian that even I was beginning to understand fragments of. "They're planning something," Dante told me one night as we lay together in his bed, my head on his chest, his fingers tracing absent patterns on my shoulder. "Something that will force my hand, make me vulnerable." "How do you know?" "Because it's what I would do." His voice was grim. "Go after what matters most. Strike at the heart instead of the edges." I lifted my head to look at him, seeing the worry etched in the lines around his eyes. "Matteo. And you." His hand cupped my face. "They know now. Know that you're not just some woman who happened to save my son. They know you live here. Know what you mean to us. To me." Fear coiled in my stomach, but I pushed it down. "Then we prepare. We're not helpless, Dante. You have resources, people, security. It's not enough." The words were torn from somewhere deep. "It's never enough when the people you love are in the crosshairs. My wife, Matteo's mother, she didn't die of illness, not really. The cancer, yes, but the stress of this life, the constant fear, the isolation required for safety. It ate away at her until there was nothing left to fight with. I watched her fade, Maya, and I swore I'd never put someone I loved through that again. But here you are, and I'm doing exactly what I promised myself I wouldn't." I sat up, ignoring the twinge in my still healing wounds, and took his face in both hands. "Listen to me. What happened to your wife is tragic, but I'm not her. I came into this with my eyes open. I chose this. Chose you. Chose this life. And yes, it's dangerous, but Dante, my old life was killing me too. Just slower. At least here I'm alive. I'm fighting for something that matters." His eyes searched mine, looking for doubt, for regret, finding only determination. "You're extraordinary," he whispered, "and terrifying." "Good. Your enemies should be terrified of me too." That drew a surprised laugh from him, breaking the tension. He pulled me back down against his chest, his arms banding around me like he could shield me from the world through sheer will. We fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other, pretending for a few hours that love could be enough protection against the storm we both felt coming. The storm broke 2 days later, during Matteo's 7th birthday party. Dante had wanted to cancel, to keep Matteo home where the security was tightest, but I'd argued against it. "He's a child," I'd said. "He deserves normal experiences. Friends, cake, presents. We can't let them take that from him." So the party happened, held in the garden under Dante's watchful eye and the subtle presence of his security team disguised as catering staff. 12 children from Matteo's expensive private school ran through the grounds, their laughter genuine and infectious. Matteo was radiant, his face sticky with cake frosting, his eyes bright with joy as he opened presents surrounded by his friends. I was helping serve cake when Marco appeared at my elbow, his expression carefully neutral, but his voice urgent. "We need to move the children inside. Now. Don't cause alarm, but we have a situation." My nurse training kicked in. Stay calm, assess, act. "What kind of situation?" 3 vehicles approaching the property, not cleared, not stopping at the gate. His hand was already on his phone, calling in reinforcements. "Dante's coordinating from the house. We need these children safe before—" The explosion cut him off, the front gate detonating in a ball of fire and twisted metal that sent shockwaves across the property. Screams erupted, children crying, mothers panicking. I saw Dante sprinting toward us, his face a mask of controlled fury and fear. "Inside!" he barked at me. "Get them all inside. Lock the panic room door. Move!" But I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. because I just realized Matteo wasn't with the group of children being herded toward the house by security. I scanned the garden frantically, my heart pounding. There, near the fountain, frozen in shock, staring at the smoke rising from the destroyed gate. "Matteo!" I screamed, already running despite the protest of my healing body. Gunfire erupted behind me, Dante's men engaging whoever had breached the property. I reached Matteo just as another explosion rocked the east wall, debris raining down around us. I threw myself over him, my body once again becoming a shield, and for a terrible moment I was back in the park, back to that first decision that had changed everything. But this time was different. This time I knew exactly what I was protecting, exactly what it would cost me if I failed. "Maya!" Dante's voice, raw with terror. Then his arms were around both of us, lifting Matteo, pulling me toward the house. We ran through chaos, men in dark clothing pouring through the breach in the wall, Dante's security team returning fire, the other party guests fleeing in every direction. We made it inside, into the reinforced safe room that Dante had shown me during one of our security briefings. The door sealed behind us with a heavy thunk, cutting off the sounds of battle outside. Inside the room were supplies, weapons, communication equipment, and terrified children with their parents. Matteo was shaking in my arms, crying silently. I held him close, checking him for injuries, finding none. "You're okay," I whispered. "You're safe. I've got you." Dante was on the phone with Marco, coordinating the response. His voice cold and commanding, despite the fear I could see in his eyes every time he glanced at Matteo and me. "How many?" he demanded. "What about the police response? Good. Keep them engaged, but don't let them get near the house." He ended the call and moved to us, kneeling in front of where I sat with Matteo. "Are you hurt?" His hands ran over both of us, checking for injuries with the same thoroughness I'd done. "We're fine," I assured him. "But Dante, those other families are in their own safe rooms. This house has 3. Everyone's accounted for." He pulled us both into his arms, his face buried in my hair. "Cristo, when I saw you running toward him, saw you covering him again—" "I know," I whispered. "I know, but I couldn't leave him." "Of course you couldn't." He pulled back, his hands framing my face. "Because you're you. Because you run toward danger when someone you love needs you." His thumb brushed my cheek. "Just like you ran toward those bullets in the park." The battle outside lasted another 20 minutes that felt like hours. We stayed in the safe room, Matteo eventually calming enough to fall asleep against my shoulder, exhausted by fear and adrenaline. The other children clustered with their parents, wide-eyed and silent. This was the reality of Dante's world, the price of power and territory and ancient feuds. When Marco finally gave the all clear, when the reinforced door opened and we emerged into a house that smelled of gunpowder and fear, the full extent of the assault became clear. 6 of Dante's men injured, none dead. A miracle given the ferocity of the attack. 8 Volkov soldiers captured, 3 dead. The gate and east wall destroyed but repairable. And most importantly, no civilians harmed, no children caught in the crossfire. But the message was clear. The Volkovs had declared open war, and they were willing to attack a child's birthday party to make their point. After the other families had been escorted home with profuse apologies and assurances of protection, after Matteo had been put to bed with extra guards posted outside his room, Dante and I stood in his study while Marco briefed us on the situation. "This was a statement," Marco said, his face grave. "Viktor Volkov himself authorized it. He's telling us that nowhere is safe, no line sacred. It's escalation beyond anything we've seen in decades." "Then we escalate back," Dante replied, his voice ice. "We hit their operations, their territory, their—" "No," I interrupted, surprising both men. They turned to me, and I stood straighter, despite the exhaustion pulling at me. That's what they want. They want you angry, reactive, making mistakes. They want you to hit back so they have justification to hit harder. It's a cycle that never ends. What are you suggesting? Dante's tone was sharp. That we do nothing? That we let them think they can attack my home, terrorize my son, and face no consequences? I'm suggesting we end this, permanently. I looked between them, an idea forming that was either brilliant or suicidal. They want leverage over you, right? They think I'm your weakness, so let's use that. Marco's eyes narrowed. Explain? Let them take me. The words hung in the air like a live grenade. Stage it so it looks real. Let me be captured. Then while they're focused on me, on using me against Dante, you take them down. All of them. Viktor Volkov and his entire operation. Absolutely not, Dante said flatly. I'm not using you as bait. That's insane. Is it more insane than living like this? Than having Matteo's birthday party turn into a war zone? I moved closer to him. Dante, I'm a nurse. I'm trained to go into dangerous situations to save lives. This is no different. This is completely different. These are killers who would torture you to get to me. Which is why you'll make sure they don't have time to. I grabbed his arms, forcing him to look at me. I trust you. I trust that you'll come for me, that you'll protect me even when I'm in their hands. But this war has to end, and I can end it. Let me do this. Let me save your son the way I did in that park, by being brave enough to put myself in the line of fire. The silence stretched between us, tension crackling like electricity. Marco watched us both, his expression thoughtful. Finally, he spoke. It could work, if we plan it right, coordinate with our people inside the Volkov organization, use her as the distraction while we dismantle them from within. Marco, Dante's voice was warning. She's right, nephew. This cycle has to end, and sometimes the only way to end a war is to give your enemy exactly what they think they want. He looked at me with new respect. You're either very brave or very foolish, Maya Santos. Maybe both, I admitted. But I'm also right, and you know it. Dante's hands fisted at his sides, his jaw working as he fought between love and logic. If anything happens to you, if they hurt you, then you'll make them pay. I know you will. I took his face in my hands, making him see me, really see me. But it won't come to that, because you're the smartest, most dangerous man I know, and you'll get to me before they can do real damage. I believe that with everything I am. He closed his eyes, pain etched in every line of his face. I can't lose you. You won't, I promise. I kissed him softly. We're going to end this, Dante. We're going to give Matteo a safe future. Isn't that worth the risk? The plan took 3 days to arrange. 3 days of Marco coordinating with informants, of Dante's men gathering intelligence on Volkov locations, of me learning everything I could about what to expect, what to say, how to survive until rescue came. 3 days of holding Matteo extra tight, of memorizing the sound of his laugh, of Dante making love to me like each time might be the last. On the 4th day, I went for a walk in the city, a staged outing with deliberately light security. The Volkovs took the bait within an hour. I was grabbed outside a coffee shop, thrown into a van, a bag over my head before I could scream. My heart pounded with genuine fear because this was real now, no longer theoretical. They took me to a warehouse that smelled of rust and blood. When they removed the bag, I found myself facing Viktor Volkov himself, a man in his 60s with cold eyes and a smile that promised cruelty. The nurse who saved Dante Moretti's brat, he said in accented English, and became his whore in the process. How touching. I didn't respond, just met his gaze steadily, remembering Dante's instructions. Show no fear. Give them nothing. Trust that I'm coming. You're going to make a video for me, Viktor continued. You're going to tell Dante that if he wants to see you alive again, he'll turn over his territory, his operations, everything. Or we'll send you back to him in pieces." They set up a camera, positioned me in a chair, began filming. I said the words they wanted, but I also gave signals, touches, to specific parts of my face that indicated this location, this type of building. Information that Dante's people would read and use. What Victor didn't know was that one of his own men was on Dante's payroll. Didn't know that even as he filmed his ransom demand, Dante's forces were surrounding the warehouse. Didn't know that he'd made his final mistake by taking something that belonged to Dante Moretti. The assault came swift and brutal. Doors exploding inward, flash bangs, gunfire. I threw myself to the floor as chaos erupted around me. Through the smoke and noise, I saw Dante, a dark angel of vengeance. His gun steady, his face a mask of cold fury as he cut through anyone between us. "Maya!" His voice cut through the chaos. Then he was there, pulling me up, checking me for injuries. "Did they hurt you?" No, I'm fine." He kissed me hard, desperate, then pulled me toward the exit. Behind us, I heard Victor shouting in Russian, heard Marco's voice responding, heard the sounds that meant this was ending exactly as we'd planned. Outside, surrounded by Dante's men, I finally let myself shake. Let the fear I'd suppressed flood through me. Dante held me through it, his hands stroking my hair, his voice murmuring assurances I couldn't quite hear over the ringing in my ears. "It's over," he finally said clearly. "Victor is in custody. His organization is dismantled. Marco's coordinating with the authorities to ensure it stays that way. It's over, amore mio. You're safe. We're all safe." I looked up at him, seeing the truth in his eyes. "Matteo?" Home with Rosa, completely unaware anything happened, probably eating too much gelato and watching cartoons. His smile was shaky with relief. "Thanks to you. Thanks to your insane bravery and your willingness to risk everything." "Not everything," I corrected. "I never risked what mattered. I knew you'd come. I trusted you. And I'll spend the rest of my life being worthy of that trust." 3 months later, I stood in that same garden where I'd first shielded Matteo from bullets, where we'd thrown him a birthday party that turned into a battle, where everything had changed and changed again. But this time, there were no threats lurking beyond the walls, no enemies planning attacks. Just family, Dante's extended network of cousins, uncles, associates, gathered to witness a wedding. I wore a simple white dress that accommodated my still occasional back pain, my hair loose the way Dante liked it. Matteo stood beside me as my man of honor, his suit matching his father's, his smile wide enough to split his face. And at the end of the aisle, Dante waited, this powerful, dangerous, impossibly gentle man who'd given me a home when I'd had nowhere to go, a family when I'd been alone, a purpose beyond mere survival. The ceremony was conducted in both Italian and English, honoring both sides of our merged world. When Dante slid the ring onto my finger, his hands shook slightly, the only sign of emotion in his otherwise controlled demeanor. "I love you," he whispered, just for me. "My brave, impossible, beautiful Maya. Thank you for saving my son. Thank you for saving me. Thank you for showing me what love is supposed to feel like," I whispered back. "What family means. What home is." The reception lasted into the evening, full of laughter and music and joy that felt earned after everything we'd survived. At one point, I found myself watching Matteo dance with Rosa, his face alight with happiness, and felt Dante's arms wrap around me from behind. "Any regrets?" he murmured against my hair. I thought about the scared nurse who'd walked through a park months ago, drowning in debt and loneliness. Thought about the split-second decision to throw myself in front of bullets. Thought about every choice that had led me here, to this garden, this family, this life. Not even one, I replied honestly. You? Only that I didn't find you sooner. He turned me in his arms, his eyes soft with love. But we have the rest of our lives to make up for lost time. As the sun set over the garden, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, I looked around at the faces of people who'd become family. Marco with his stern approval, Rosa with her knowing smile, Matteo with his pure joy, and Dante, always Dante, holding me like I was something precious he'd never take for granted. I'd come into his world expecting danger and found love, expected darkness and found light, expected to save one life and ended up saving my own. Some people might call what we had impossible: a nurse and a mafia boss, a woman who'd had nothing, and a man who'd had everything except what mattered most. But love doesn't care about impossibility. It only cares about truth. And the truth was this: I was exactly where I belonged, with exactly who I was meant to be with, living exactly the life I was brave enough to choose. And every bullet I'd taken, every risk I'd accepted, every moment of fear, all of it was worth it for this. For us. For forever. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.